All right, everybody. First of all, thank you for everybody who's coming out for this panel, because we are going to be exploring the shadow side of entrepreneurship, which is failure. And I think there are people who believe that to really embrace success, you need to first embrace failure. Before we begin, I'd love to see just who's in the audience. How many people in the audience are founders? Ooh. Okay. Oh, fantastic. And how many people are investors? Okay, great. How many people have experienced failure in your life? Okay, good. Well, good. We have a really rich decades of actual experience here. So we're going to try in the next 15 minutes to distill lots of pearls of wisdom. Before we do, just a quick story. I remember when I was a kid, one of the things I hated was that on Sundays, my mom used to make us go to Bala Vihar. And at Bala Vihar, one of the classes we had to take was Vedanta, right? It was the Bhagavad Gita. And I vividly remember one day in class when our teacher said, the key to happiness is to be detached from your outcomes. The key learning of the Bhagavad Gita was to do your duty, be passionate, but ultimately let go of the results or the outcomes. And it was a beautiful message to get when you were a kid about the happiness, about the source of happiness in life. But then, of course, as you grow up, your full life is measured by outcomes. And you're constantly being confronted on whether or not you're delivering on what you're executing against. And so, I do think it's a fascinating thing to investigate as an entrepreneur, these dual sides of success and failure. Bill George, who's at Harvard, he is such a proponent of failure that he says that you can't actually be a true leader unless you've failed. He doesn't think that you can understand what leadership is like without failure, and he says that you have to go through a deep cauldron to actually galvanize yourself into being a success. So today we're going to be talking about failure. But to talk about failure, we're bringing you two of the most successful people in Silicon Valley. The people on the stage are not just successful, they're intimidatingly successful. I'm going to have them they're each going to get 3 minutes to share some insights. But let me first just very quickly introduce them. Mudhu Sudhakar. How many people know, is it Madhu or Mudhu?
Both are fine.
Okay, because I go by, I know it's probably Mudhu. But how many people have heard of Mudhu? Okay, so Mudhu has had 4 companies in the last 12 years, whose cumulative exits have been around $800 million. Most recently, he was the CEO of Kaspida, which got acquired by Splunk for $190 million. He's also an engineer by training who's become a CEO. Next to him is Naveen Chadha from Mayfield. How many people have heard of Mayfield? Right, fantastic. Naveen's also intimidatingly impressive, a double E from IIT by background and also from Stanford. Who's not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 8 times listed on the Forbes Midas list of the top VCs in the Valley. And Naveen's backed winners such as Akamai and Solar City and Make My Trip. Okay, so we have some luminaries here, and part of what I'm going to task them to address when they open things up is how can they talk about failure when they are such notable successes, and why is failure relevant? Given that they are so successful. So what we're going to do is they're each going to give 3 minutes, and what I've tasked them with is to actually share an experience of failure and how they've recovered from that failure. Because what I found is that it's not really a question of whether or not you will fail, but how you recover, which is the key. I might ask 1 or 2 questions, but then what I want to invite is if somebody has a personal question or situation to express, we're going to try to allow Q&A at the end if we have a minute or 2 at the end. So if you do have a question, please get ready and stand up there towards the end of the panel. But I'm going to kick it off with Mudhu to start talking for anything that he wants to share with the group. Mudhu.
Thank you, Ravi. Okay. So let's do one more unscientific poll. How many of you think you made a mistake and you learned from your mistakes? Please stand up. Nobody. Let's see. Cool. VC is also standing next to us. That's good. Good sign. Usually VCs don't admit that you make mistakes.
You can't learn unless you fail, man.
That's good.
We fail 1/3 of the time.
That's good. That's good. So I don't have much to say. I think I would love to hear questions and comments. So from my side, as Ravi said, failure is such an important concept that we have to learn from the failures, and everybody makes mistakes. All founders, all entrepreneurs, and VCs. You just have to keep learning from your mistakes. Hopefully, you don't make the same mistakes. That's what you can hope for.
But I'm going to say Madhu. Madhu, can you share though an example of failure? Because I think part of the issue here is that we deify everybody who's up here on stage. And I think there's some danger in doing that, to saying that, oh, I can't be like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Madhu or Naveen. And the reality is that you are the same. Everybody's the same. It's just how you react, which is different. So I partly want to sort of de-deify you guys a bit. Can you share an experience of failure that you actually went through, what it was at whatever level of detail you can, and then how you recovered? If you want, I can start with Naveen and then come back to you.
Either way is fine.
Okay, or if you have one, go for it, Madhu.
So I think, look, as I said, I would have made many failures. I've gone through in personally my life, both professionally and personally too, right? But I think if I have to give you one without giving the specifics, I think firing the people from your companies soon enough is the important mistake that we all make. So once you identify somebody is not a team player and somebody that you want to not have in the team, act fast. Time is never late. So people who wait for 6 months, a year, keep doing, that's a mistake. I would say that's one area that I can talk about. The second is choosing the right partner as a VCs. I think a lot of people focus on economic terms, so valuations, doesn't matter. Find the person that you care the most, who has your back, and in terms of partner and the board member, sounding board member. If you don't have that, that's...
And did you make a mistake there?
Anonymous, I don't want to get into detail of that.
Okay. Well, I do want, so I would encourage you guys to share whatever details you can share. I'll pass it over to, and in full disclosure, Naveen is also a backer of Alchemist, but Mayfield did not actually invest in us the first time around. I sort of failed the first time around, and then I came back the second time around with Naveen and Mayfield after I had more proof points joined. But I'm gonna throw it over to Naveen, and if there are real examples of failure that you can share, they're highly encouraged as well.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
So the companies and the founders.
Yeah. I'll talk about my failures too, not other people's. So I think the most important thing I would say, having been a serial entrepreneur for like 8-9 years and a VC for another 12 to 13 years, failure is very important. And the reason is, if you're not thinking big and you're afraid of failure, you're never going to do something big in your life, right? So let's talk about myself, right? Like, grew up in India, IIT, came to Stanford, started my first company right out of Stanford in '95. It was called VXstream, invented streaming video on the internet, got acquired by Microsoft, became Windows Media, felt good, did a second company that went public and then was acquired, and then came to the third company where the failure happened. The third company was called Revio. The company was a SaaS company focused on providing back office applications to small businesses with less than 100 employees in 2000 and 2001. And when you're at the forefront of technology, living in Silicon Valley, you think, hey, the internet has happened, everybody is online, and you just put your product up there and everybody will just come and start using it. It didn't happen, right? There were no channels to get to that kind of a market. And what we realized is, like, the product we were providing wasn't a painkiller. It was a vitamin for small companies because they had pains of hiring people, retaining people, doing their payroll. And those were the things they were outsourcing rather than going online and essentially trying to use a SaaS product. But what we did is we were persistent as founders. We quickly pivoted and figured out among the small business market, is there a customer base which cares about back office applications? And turns out it happened to be the CPA market. So we merged with a company called CPA.com. It's still around 12 years later. It's like WebMD of the CPA profession. And the big learning I had through that experience, which I tell founders today, is, hey, you all start with a big idea. Don't think you're the customer or Silicon Valley is the customer. Think broadly. Make sure the product you're providing is really a must-have for some customer. It really is a painkiller. It's a Tylenol. It's not vitamin A, C, D, E, F, G. And that's what matters. So that's my biggest learning, is make sure the product or service you're providing is a must-have for the customers you're going after.
That's a great, great takeaway. All ideas, most ideas are good ones. It's about getting ones that are going to actually take off, that are real must-have needs. Madhu, I'm going to throw it over to you. The question that I have to you is, can you talk about your relationship to failure? By that I mean, is it a persistent fear of failure that drives you? Do you ascribe to the philosophy that only the paranoid survive? And do you have a fear of failure which drives you, which is one school of thought? Or do you actually welcome and embrace failure? And are you not fearful? And do you jump in, and then when you're in the moments of failure, do you react? Or is it something different? What's your relationship like with failure?
Good question. I think all of the above. I think when you're going through building a startup and a founding, right, so you go through all these motions that Ravi talked about. You want to be paranoid, survive, right? When I was at Intel, that's the Andy Grove's mantra and Vinod Dham's mantra, right? So you always have to think that the competitors behind you will come and take you out. You always have to worry about the product won't work. You also always worry that sales guys are not performing as it is. So you always need to be paranoid. So, but that should not always the end to the means. It's okay to make a mistake. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes. The thing about the startup is you have to be agile. It's at the end of the day, you guys are dreaming this company. It's your dream, your vision. So when you set a goals 10x higher, you're going to fail. But making the course corrections there in terms of what mistakes you're making, it measure, monitor, but react fast, right? If you are agile, don't take too much time. Like I tell people, don't walk like an elephant, be a cheetah. Right? I mean, I don't mind making a mistake, but I want to correct it fast, measure it, so innovate. So making a short iterations is what is needed now. 20 years back, you take 2 years to build a product, then you do a go-to-market, and you come out. Now you want to be, it's like a Moore's Law in startups. If you don't have $1 million revenue in 18 months, you're a dead company. So that means you got to make enough mistakes, iterate with customers. You got to build the product with the customers. That means you got to have a product in 6 months, and then another 6 months you're iterating with customers, and revenue in another 6 months. So I think all the things that you talked about in terms of failures, mistakes, you got to go through all of those.
Okay, and I'm going to move it on just for the sake of time. If there's anybody who has a question, I want to invite whoever's a question to come up to that mic there. No risk, no reward, classic entrepreneurship. So I know it might feel uncomfortable, but this is what failure is about, which is really making yourself vulnerable and asking the questions so that you can grow. And so if there is a question, come on up. So what I'd love you to do is, if you can, instead of if you're able to, if you have a situation, pose the situation, and then I might have these guys ask questions to get more detail on the situation, and then they'll give you feedback. So go for it. Oh, come up here. It sounds like the mic's not working. Okay. You can come up here.
We learn from that failure.
We'll learn from that failure and move forward. And if you can see, different people have different mentalities when it comes to, if you can feel Madhu, I'm going to say Madhu because that's what just feels natural to me. Madhu is just moves
Mic
quickly.
works just fine. Mic is working. You got to speak into the mic.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Course correction.
Well, here, come up here, Amit, and
Okay.
yeah.
Hi, this is Amit here. One of the things which often offends startup is the fear of failure. Like you're developing a product and say, how would an open source come and attack you? Or something like that. So now in the case of Splunk, there's a very prominent open source coming up. So how do you handle that fear of failure? I mean, it's not a failure, but that fear of failure which can also be as detrimental as a failure.
Sure. Good question. I think, look, as I said earlier, comment, don't fear. Make mistakes. It's okay. It's not your money anyway. It's a VC's money. Naveen has plenty of the money. Keep making mistakes. Correct it. If you believe in it, they'll invest in it. So time is what you don't have. You're getting old. All of us have to worry about the time. Don't worry about the time. Don't worry about making mistakes. Plenty of VC money out there.
And when you get caught in your head, when you're just thinking a lot, how do you get out of your head, Madhu? And when you're thinking about everything that can go wrong, that your family's all dependent on this, and that can become paralyzing. Do you have any tactics or hacks to get out of your head?
Good question. I think one thing that I recommend, that I think TiEcon is a great place for mentors. I mean, for you in terms of a mentorship, in terms of somebody that you can rely on, go to angels. I mean, go to people like Frank Slootman, Dan Warmanovan, Ram Sriram, Eric Schmidt. There are like top guys out there. There are people like Ram Reddy. There are people like Venk Shukla or Vish Mishra. TiEcon is full of mentors, right? So the reason you guys are here is reach out to those mentors, get friends with them,
Okay.
right?
Naveen, any response to that situation as an entrepreneur where you can be caught in a state of paralysis because you're constantly worried about what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think the advice like I give to entrepreneurs is, right, like build a culture of customer being first. It doesn't matter, there'll be a lot of competing technologies, there'll be a lot of open source technologies, but if your product, what I said earlier, is a must-have, and you're obsessed about solving the need of your customer, just don't worry, just keep executing.
Okay, so I know we're out of time. I've tasked each of these guys to come up with a 6-word takeaway to leave you with. So just in 6 words to share some takeaway. I think one of the takeaways that I'm getting from this is to really anchor your sense of value in something besides the thing that's causing the fear of the failure. So that could be customers, that could be mentors, that could be family, but I think that's, or speed, just move quickly, and that can also be a cure. But I'm going to start with Naveen for the 6-word takeaway, and then go to Madhu. So we'll have Naveen give a 6-word takeaway, and this all do one clap, and then go to Madhu. Naveen.
So my 6-word takeaway in my experience has been, startups die of indigestion, not starvation.
Startups die of indigestion, not starvation. Thank you.
Ooh.
Okay. Madhu.
Mine is very simple, I guess. Dream big, set 10x goals, and hire best teams.
Dream big, set the next goals, and hire the best teams. There you go. All right. I know that was too short, but thank you all. I will transition this over to I don't know. Akshay is going to be taking over. Okay. All right. Thank you,
a lot,
everybody.
Ravi.